Welcome to navigating SAP and Siemens partnership with OpenPDM Migration Toolkit. In this presentation, we're going to do a little overview of the SAP and Siemens partnership as well as PROSTEP, talk about migration strategies that you can use and maybe some best practices, introduce the migration toolkit from OpenPDM, our product, and then finally where to start and how to get going in that migration and adoption of your new PLM. So made official on July 14th of 2020 is the Siemens and SAP partnership. So they're calling this the industrial transformation, providing product lifecycle management, asset management, and the common features across manufacturing and engineering and design. So this is going to be a merger of giants, two market leaders, both in the PLM and ERP and other spheres, and bringing together a lot of technology. What's interesting is there is some significant overlap between these two companies as well. Most notably, there's SAP, and Teamcenter PLM features that might overlap with SAP PLM. But then also, visualization features, and manufacturing features and other things. So we'll see how it all shakes out in the end, but definitely a big partnership there. Also with the reselling agreement, there's already a lot of stakes already claimed here that could be expanded upon. And, with that, it could be that one of your enterprises runs one of these softwares and is looking to introduce the others. So, over time, it could be that we're going to see a lot of maturity between this partnership, introducing new ways to integrate this digital thread between these products to provide a seamless transition between the products, and really kind of iron out, a market-leading, engineering and manufacturing suites. So how does this impact you and your engineering processes and in your infrastructure in your enterprise? Well, there could be a couple of different impacts. So, these are two market leaders. Like I said, they're going to be improving over the years the integration and capabilities of these solutions together. So that might be a good fit, doing some evaluation initially to see if this aligns with your strategy is definitely probably a good idea. And that might mean, introduction of S/4HANA or introduction of Teamcenter or moving away from SAP PLM or another maybe soon to be deprecated product. So it could be that you're an existing SAP customer that might not use Teamcenter. In that case, you might have another legacy PLM that you might want to move towards Teamcenter and do a migration. And that's really the focus of what this presentation is engineering side of that process and moving towards either Teamcenter or a new PLM. Could be that there's a lot of value in that industrial transformation. And maybe you have an old PLM as well, and the integration and the processes don't support you as much as the new PLM might. Could also be that you're an existing SAP PLM customer. So, the future might be moving in a different direction for you. And it could be that Teamcenter is not the right fit. So after you do a strategic analysis of the PLMs and a comparison of those against what your needs are, it might be that you find another PLM that fits better. And you want to move away from SAP PLM to another PLM and migrate that. So PROSTEP was started out of a consortium in Europe in the 1980s, led by automotive. So you see at the bottom, these are all companies that are European automotive tier ones and OEMs. They are our owners, along with the PROSTEP IVIP Association, which is in the lower left-hand corner. And that is our sister company, a nonprofit standards company that was set up in order to provide new standards and working groups for industries in order to create those engineering standards for interoperability. So it was expensive back then to exchange data, and we were set up in order to streamline that process and continue to do that, in different capacities, and expanding on those initial CAD data exchange with product lifecycle data to larger systems and whole system migrations and other things. One thing that differentiates PROSTEP is that we're a neutral player within the engineering domain. We really partner with most of the market leaders within this sphere, and that includes Siemens and commercial support for many Siemens products, Teamcenter and Teamcenter Enterprise and CAD packages and others. Also SAP and connectors for SAP PLM. And then also, all the other major players, the Dassaults and PTCs, Oracles and IBMs of the world. And, that includes, a lot of not just software that supports that, but then, productive implementations of those software. So well-versed in all different sorts of systems and connectors to support migration, to and from these different systems like SAP PLM and Siemens Teamcenter and others. So I'd like to now move on to migration strategy and take a look at what the process for adopting a new Teamcenter or another PLM might be, and some insights into that. So the process for an introduction of a new PLM really starts with the as-is analysis. And you might think that, well, we already know what we want to do because, there's this great new digital transformation plan within the partnership of SAP and Siemens. But I would suggest starting back and at least revisiting a lot of these early phases so that you can understand, what the comparison is to the market and make sure that it fits your enterprise very well. And then, take a look at what that then might look like. So develop what the strategy might be, understand how that fits within the Teamcenter model or another PLM model, do those, comparisons, and then, start thinking about migration at that point. So it could be that you need to figure out what type of migration, when it needs to be there, what's the best type of migration specifically for your business environment. And then, select the system and select the different partners and start planning for the implementation of that, developing pilots and proofs of concept and things like this. During implementation, you want to be, while you're developing the new PLM system and processes and setting up all the software and resources, understanding how that fits within your enterprise. Also implementing scripts for doing the migration, as well as the validation and the processes that are involved in that. During the go live preparation, if you're doing a big bang, do a migration rehearsals, as well as user acceptance testing of the system and the data. And then finally, execute the productive migration in the case you're doing a big bang migration. Or do a rollout for the initial PLM. When thinking about migration strategies, I think it's best to start really with the requirements and separating those into really two categories. What's required for decommissioning that legacy system that you want to consolidate? And then what's required to go forward and either introducing or to work within the new PLM system in Teamcenter. So that might actually separate your PLM to what the data is that requires to be extracted, what could be archived because it's needed to be retained, but maybe not needed to go forward. And then what's needed to go forward that needs to be put into the new system. So questions like version or iteration requirements, right? So are you going to need all the history in every iteration or every version, or maybe just all the released copies and the latest in work, things like that? And then how to handle other types of data. So A lot of data is captured within workflows and processes for signatures, things like that. And some of that's required to be captured, but it doesn't map to the new system because it just operates differently. And you can get creative about these things, creating maybe reports and documents in order to map that data to the new system so that you can still access it and really bring that forward. And then in your new system, what's required to be operational. So if you do have maybe 20 programs of CAD data that's needed, and the other ones you haven't actually touched in a while, maybe that's right. If you have a long-term archiving strategy, then you maybe can use that strategy and say, push some of this data so you don't need to maintain it in the PLM in the future. If you haven't used it for a while, right? But then also, alternatively, if you don't have a long-term archiving strategy, maybe you can, adopt one and start thinking about what that might mean and what that looks like and how you need to have it interact with your organization. There are primarily two migration methods, and these kind of get maybe shuffle around a little bit, and they can interchange a little bit. But two methods of migration are ETL, being extract, transform, and load data, and then also doing it transactionally. So taking one piece of data and moving it all the way from the source system to Teamcenter. So in the ETL, you do three processes effectively. The first is you pull the data out. That means getting data out of the database or through the APIs of the old system, and then loading that into a database in the middle, a source staging database, right? And that's going to stay there. Now, when it's loaded out, then you can do what's the transform part of this. And this means a couple of things. This might mean mapping of the metadata in order to move it into a format that's acceptable to Teamcenter. It could also mean conversion of CAD data or quality checks or other types of analysis of that data. And then it could also mean a little bit of data cleanup, right? So depending on the condition of your data, within that transform, you can do some data cleanup. But this should be well scoped and known ahead of time. You don't want to go into a project not knowing what needs to be changed in order to be loaded, because that can really push, what the dates in the project and the effort and the transformation. And then finally, loading. So being able to take that data and put it into Teamcenter through the APIs or another loading mechanism. So the second part is transactional. And with a transactional, what you're trying to accomplish is moving small sets of data within a single process. Now, that's not going to be as performant and efficient, right? But it does allow you to do different types of use cases of keeping systems together so that you can migrate just single sets of data and push it over. Maybe that might be one program's worth of data or one division's worth of data, but kind of stage it so it's not an all-in-one type of migration, but can be little migrations that can handle delta updates between the systems fairly easily. And what you need to do is really define this insert update strategy in order to push data there to make sure it's well aligned with the migration. So the primary reason you would use one method over another is if your business was able to move that way into Teamcenter just over a weekend or a week or whatever that might take. So if you're capable of doing that and your business can flip over that way, then an ETL strategy is probably recommended. It's generally cheaper, easier to execute than the incremental migration. But if you're not able to do that and you have multiple divisions that have lots of data and there's too much risk overall in a migration that might just be over a weekend, then this incremental type migration is probably recommended, where you might be able to take a program or a division or something of that nature move it over, iron out the kinks within Teamcenter for that program, and then move on to the next one, with some knowledge and some best practices established. So a little advice on project planning. For one-time migrations, typically we start with a strategy and requirements workshops, and develop then a set of requirements that include, really largely the mapping, right? What it looks like in the source system, what it needs to be in the target system, and then also the processes that are going to be defined in order to make that happen. So then we go ahead and implement some of those processes and get the scripts ready for migration, and then do what's called migration rehearsals. So typically we start with a limited data rehearsal, maybe 10% of the total data within the source system, and push that in order to test basic functionality, get an idea of performance, and understanding of mappings and ensuring that fields fit and things like that. And then we follow that up with full data migration rehearsals. So it means at least one, depending on the data cleanliness, we might do 3, and really execute the whole data migration. And what this is going to do is check to ensure that all the error conditions are taken into account, so that we can correct all these inconsistencies within the data and make sure that the final migration is going to go cleanly. And then finally execute the production migration and move all the users from the former system into Teamcenter. The other method is an incremental migration. In order to really do that well, we recommend an agile approach, and do 2 to 4 week sprints, right? So that might start with requirements overall, but refining it down to what actions need to be accomplished for each sprint, testing out those use cases, executing the user acceptance for that type of integration and incremental functionality, and then executing that using the same team, right? So this is an important part. Sometimes it's thought that you can build the tool with one team and execute it with another. And generally, I would not recommend that, because the ones that understand the script and processes are the ones that develop it. And the same ones are going to be able to adjust things on the rehearsal, to make sure that it's well aligned, and be really the best type of implementers that you need in order to actually execute the migration. Now we're going to move on and talk about PROSTEP's OpenPDM Migration Toolkit. So OpenPDM is sold through different flavors, right? And they're focused on the use cases themselves. So OpenPDM Integrate and Connect are focused really on the integration. It could be used with a bidirectional synchronization kind of use case, but trying to bridge 2 systems together so that you can exchange data between them or more. Really, a focus is on a multi-system integration. OpenPDM Collaborate and cCenter are built to try and allow corporate borders to be kind of brought down, and allow for things like joint ventures and strong collaboration with partners. And then OpenPDM Migrate is tailored towards migration. So that's really what we're going to focus on today, and kind of bring together some examples around that. So OpenPDM brings together a wide variety of different connectors, as well as a base module that's seen in the middle. This is somewhat looks like what our architecture is as well. So with these connectors plugged into the OpenPDM base module and providing the processes to do migration or integration. So that includes different PLM and PDM systems, including SAP PLM and Teamcenter, but then other various systems that are from other vendors. In the upper left, you see these CAD connectors, and these are focused and centered on trying to do integration and migration of CAD. So to analyze the data so that you understand it a little bit better, to pull out all that hidden references of those CADs and the attributes there so that we can effectively load it, right? So add PLM data to that and then be able to take what's on a directory and then migrate it into a Teamcenter or another system. And then also we've got other connectors for ALM, ERP, and then other data formats. So other services like REST services, OSLC, and XML, and STEP formats. We are PROSTEP, so we do support a wide variety of interchange with those types of formats as well. So at PROSTEP, in order to load data in the Teamcenter, as an example, we'll use OpenPDM. And that uses a variety of different interfaces and tools that we can use in order to process that data. So primarily with Teamcenter, we use our Teamcenter connector with the SOA interface, and that enables you to create items and changes and all sorts of other data, that's supported through the SOA interface. But then when we get to CAD and bulk loading CAD, we have what we call our controllers, and that includes our UG clone controller for NX data, and TCIC or IPEM or SWIM for CATIA and Creo and SolidWorks integrations for Teamcenter. And that allows you to use in conjunction with the Teamcenter connector or another connector the batch interface of these in order to push the data in effectively. In OpenPDM, we support those different use cases that we showed on the other slide. So that includes migration, including those staging databases for source and target, as well as transformations into STEP if needed to be, processing of CAD data in order to do some of those transformations or examinations, and other types of services that are important for a migration. So OpenPDM Migrate is really a collection of all these different tools and a framework that you can use in order to execute your migrations between these different systems. So like I said, it has those source and target staging databases in it, but it also has analysis tools so that you can check the data for data cleanliness up front, understand what the source data looks like and identifying potential issues. You can examine those CAD files that might be on a directory or ones that might be within binary formats and zips or something like that. And then, there's out-of-the-box transformations that can be made available between the export process, the mapping process, and then also the import process. And so starting with a framework there that enables you with high performance to perform those different operations. And you just need to plug in how you want to, or what you want to export and how you want to map it, and then what you want to import and what your different import strategy might be. It also includes all sorts of reporting and KPI reports, making sure that you can get the right performance for your migration, understand the data effectively, and also how it was processed effectively, so that you can do any types of transformation you need in the rehearsals and understanding those data. So really a whole comprehensive set of tools and a framework together in order to perform these types of migrations. So this is an example of a high-level visualization of the architecture for OpenPDM Migrate. And that includes those different connectors, like those puzzle pieces. So if you're moving away from SAP PLM, you might have an SAP PLM connector as that source system connector. And then there's that process engine in the middle, and that's where that template for the OpenPDM Migrate is filled in, and we add any other scripting and mapping and business logic that's needed there, as well as access to those databases and different types of processing that needs to happen in the middle for any types of data. So with these different OpenPDM connector for export, we'll load OpenPDM, we'll do the transform in the middle, and then our Teamcenter connector or another PLM connector import the data to that 2B target system. And finally, where to start and what are the next steps? There's a lot of OpenPDM customers out there, and quite a few of these are good Teamcenter migrations as well. So one example of a SAP Teamcenter migration was Zollner, and we used an iterative approach there to perform this. Doing a big bang, but doing that over time and moving the incrementally, one office at a time, effectively, and include data like the purchase parts, BOMs, manufacturers, and other types of data within SAP to Teamcenter. So another example of moving from SAP PLM to another system would be at Continental, where we moved the CATIA data that was within SAP and put that into Windchill. And so moving that through the work group manager and making it interoperable within there at Continental. So one of the things we'd like to do is in engaging is kind of determine what these steps are. So if you're starting to evaluate a move towards Teamcenter or a move away from SAP PLM to another PLM, then start thinking about that, what that might look like, what the ROI is for your enterprise. You can engage us. We can be helpful in that. Specifically within the migration sphere, we do have a process that's pretty ironed out for doing that. So that starts with a questionnaire that we evaluate what the source and target systems are going to look like, try and figure out the data quantity and types and how the process and what the roles are and the context within that. And that's really to kind of overall do a scope of what that migration might look like, and make sure that we have a good handle on that and have an understanding and give you some knowledge of what the understanding might be too, of what the migration looks like. Then we'll follow that up with a discovery workshop, and we'll do some more targeted investigation following that migration questionnaire, but then detail some of those models, what the migration is going to look like, what the processes are going to look like, and then look into the mapping. Yeah, so what the expected outcomes are going to be, changes that might need to be made within the systems and things like that. And then the output is typically a migration specification that we can agree to from the workshop and some of the meetings there. And then finally, migration kickoff. So, with all that strategy and teaming already arranged, we put together all the phases and get the first steps of the infrastructure moving and the mapping all set and move ahead and start executing that migration. So if you're interested, you can email us or call us, and we'd be happy to get you started or start talking about it. And remember that PROSTEP is here to help. So we've been through this a lot of different times on many different projects and seen it across a lot of different types of enterprises and domains. And with all that shared experience, we can bring a little bit of insight to this and really guide you through what's needed. And with our OpenPDM product that's been around for about 20 years, help you with your migration. Thank you. I'm Brian Scouten, again from PROSTEP Inc. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Feel free to reach out to me or to PROSTEP. We'd be glad to hear from you.